Okay, I'm going to start with the learning sponsors momentarily. Okay. Learning sponsors, a year of learning, Isaac and Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Isser, friends of Leonie Meisem and Leah Saber Bas Chanuk Zundel, friends of Malaskatsky, Moshe Zelig ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family in memory of his wife Malka Chana Bas Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi ben Zev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lozinski, Mordechai Shlomo ben Meir, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Kohen, those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malkabas, Meshulam Yisacha. A month of learning by Susan and Ronald Podolsky, in memory of her mother, Chaya Bas Avram Dov, by B. Pizer, in memory of her father, Yisachar Dov ben Shmuel, by Judith and Michael Poretsky, in memory of her mother, Razel Bat Yehuda Leib, by Stanley Presser, in memory of his wife, Chaya Leah Bas Zev Cohen, the Malki and Rabbi Dr. Yankee Honig, in memory of her aunt, Emma Edel Bas Shimon. A week of learning by Ruth Kostman, in memory of her son, Yisrael Yosef ben Shmuel, by Alan Blumenfeld, in memory of his mother, Fegi Bat Pinchas, by Marcia and Gary Schrager, in memory of her father, Shmuel ben Meir. Today being the 21st, there are no individual days of learning for today. Amen. Shemas have an aliyah, crank rafia, belti yeshir, shema tliyah, and l'chol b'nei Israel a good geben shtiyah. Okay. Okay. Michael will have to talk for 2 minutes at the end of the shiur. I spoke to Shimon, and he is quite willing to participate in the daily, but there are times when he's going to be away, and I want to see what times you're away and when he's away. Exactly. Right. What was the first one you mentioned? Okay. No. Shimon Green. Okay. Okay. All right, we're going to be starting in a moment on Dalet Amud Beis, right? Okay, about 4 lines up from the bottom. Okay. Okay, one of the things that I found difficult, and I think that's why there is a certain situation in the Gemara, is that keeping track which explanation was given by Rava and which is given by Rabbah. Okay, right. So while I may not always, okay, that's why I believe that there are times when the Gemara restates the argument by each. Okay, and particularly because at the end we saw at one point where the Gemara clearly said, if I remember correctly, Rabbah itle de Rav. Okay.
He acknowledges to Rabbah that you can't always easily verify.
Okay. So we've got these 2 different, for the moment, rationales that have been presented in this initial machloket. Okay. Do we say that the issue is based on the concept that the Sofrim that exist beyond the land of Eretz Yisrael are inadequate, let's put it this way, okay? Inadequate or incompetent, but I think inadequate I want to use, to know that the entire get must be written lishma for her benefit, okay? Because we're going to come back to that issue a little bit later today. Okay, okay, all right. Or do we say that it's because witnesses are not available in order to rectify and clarify and approve of the signatures? Okay, those are the 2 basic arguments. Okay. So I mention that only because we're going to continue to see that the Gemara is going to come back. It proceeds to keep this machloket as a primary focus. Not that there aren't others, okay? We already said the other day that there is I don't want to call it a sub-machloket, but there is another issue here between whether the two edim that are there for the writing are the most important, or the two edim of the handing over, what I'll call masira, the delivery, is most important. Okay, that was hinted at in the Gemara. Ultimately, that's also going to become a major item. Okay, but right now we're still talking about challenges to the Rava situation. Okay, all right. Having suggested that that's the case, okay, that's why I said we're going to pick up now in Dalet Amud Beis, about 4 lines from the bottom. Okay. So the Gemara says, Tznan, we learned in the Mishnah, Hamevi get mi Medina Sayam, one who's bringing the get from overseas, okay, from a foreign country to Eretz Yisrael, right? Ve'eno yachol lamar, and he is not able to say, B'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam, that before me it was written and before me it was signed. Okay. Now remember, we've had discussion already as to why you need to have both, I'm going to say for the moment, sides of this declaration. Okay. If you're going to say, some suggest that only the signatures are important, then you should only have to say the second side of the declaration, b'fanai nechtam. Why do you need to say, right? We had this argument. Maybe we should have said 3 words, and then the Gemara told us, remember, well, the messenger will forget, he'll mess up, whatever. Okay? So now what do we mean when we say, says this Mishnah, that if the person is not able to say, b'fanai nechtav u'nefnai nechtam, im yesh alav edim, okay, if there are witnesses on the document, yitkayem b'chotmav, let those witnesses have their signatures certified. And remember, we've said that there are a number of ways to certify the signature. It could be that the witnesses themselves appear, but if that's not viable, then bring me another document that has their signatures on it, and I'll compare that document to this document. And that is a viable way of certifying.
Or witnesses who
or I have a third way. I have somebody else who knows the signatures of those two, okay, and those can be witnesses to the signatures. So I have other means of certifying the signatures. So the argument, okay, that says because witnesses are not available is not necessarily a strong argument, okay, to say that that's the reason the messenger has to say. Okay. It could be, but we've already had the Gemara tell us that at certain times of the year we have Ole Regel. Okay,
that was the old.
But that was only in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. I admit the Gemara raised that and challenged that. Okay, all right. So that's why I'm saying still, okay, we see these issues. So what happens now? Okay, so he said, right, im yesh alav edim, if there are witnesses, yitkayem b'chotmav, v'havinen ba, and we discussed this in a sense. Mai ve'eno yachol lomar. What do we mean? What's the situation when we say that the messenger is not able to say before them, b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtav? Okay, that brings us now to Hey Arm Daf for today. Okay, top of the outcome. If we're going to say that the messenger is a deaf mute, okay, can we say that somebody who is in that physical condition is able to actually act as a messenger to deliver a get? After all, Vahatnan, aren't we taught elsewhere in another Mishnah? Hakol ksherim lahavi et get. All are viable, valid to bring a get, with the following exceptions. Chutz micheresh shotev katan, with the exception of a deaf mute, okay, a shoter, one who is mentally incompetent, or a minor, okay, because we understand that all three of these people may not have the mental skills to act in that fashion. Va'amar Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef there says, Hacha b'mayaskinen, what then are we dealing with? Kigon shenatnu, if we're going to argue it's the possibility of a cheresh, then how can we give an explanation to that? Says Rav Yosef, okay? Kigon shenatnu la kashehu pikeach. It was a situation where he gave it to her when he was aware, okay? He had all his mental competence, right? Velo hispeak lomar, and he did not have the time or the opportunity to say b'fanai nichtava b'fanai nechtam, the declaration. Ad shenit charesh, until the time that he became, okay, deaf mute. But so therefore, we see and still needs to confirm the witness signature. Okay, the Rabbah Necha, to Rava, that's an acceptable explanation. The Rabbah Kasha, but to Rabbah, that's still problematic.
You're only worried about the signature.
Right, it's what happens, right? Kasha, it's a problematic, right? So what happens? So I'm going to remove the option of the cheresh, and I'm going to suggest perhaps another explanation why he did not say the declaration. Hacha b'mayaskinen, what are we talking about then? La'achar shalamdu. Maybe it was after the scribes clearly learned the requirement lishma for the entire get. Okay, ihachi, if that's the case, yachol nami gzera shema yachzor davar lekil kulo. Then perhaps maybe we still need to require the declaration to be cited. Why? To make the declaration valid. Okay. Why is that? Because he need not say to invalidate the signatures as others can still do so.
No.
Okay. Right?
In other words, times may change.
Right. So why? Because they may go back. They may go back to the problem of that they forget or that they're not aware that it has to be lishma. Okay, the kil kulo.
Concept,
right?
As 2 days young.
Well, we'll see. Ihachi, if that's the case, is the Gemara, what happens? Ein no yachol. Okay, maybe then we say he's unable. Okay, and also not have to say it. Okay, ein no yachol, that person who is not able to say it, okay, would also still, okay, have to do it. Pikeach v'nitcharesh milta delo shchicha. But a situation of that first explanation, saying that he was aware and then became a deaf mute, that's not common.
Wildly.
Okay? Umilta delo shchicha lo gazur barabanan. And such a situation that is not common or not probable, for that reason, the rabbis don't make decrees. Okay. Now, we're going to raise another example. What about the following? Vaha isha. What about a woman who's delivering her own get? Delo shchicha. There too, that's not necessarily a common situation, right? But nevertheless, utnan, we have a Mishnah that teaches Ha'isha atzma meviya gita, that a woman herself may bring her get. Ubilvad shetzricha lomar b'fanai nechtam. But she must also make the declaration. Okay. Why? Shelo techlok b'shlichut. In order not to make a separation between one kind of messenger and another kind of messenger. In other words, just have the same regulation for all messengers. Okay? Ihachi, if that's the case, Ba'al Nami. Then maybe when the husband himself acts as the messenger and brings it, we should say he too has to say. Alma Tana, Alama Tanya. Why should that be taught then? The brightest tells us as follows. A brightest tells us, Hu atzmo shehevi gito, that when the husband himself brings the get, Ein tzarich lomar b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam. There is no requirement for him to say the declaration.
And there should be.
Okay. Tama mai. The reasoning why might that be the case, and more I might say, Rabbanam, according to the rabbis, tzrich lomar b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam. Maybe he also should be required. Okay, so because we've just said that the reason she has to say it is shelo tachlok b'shlichut, maybe that should apply when the husband himself also is bringing the ed. Okay, what? Right, maybe that should apply as well. All right, what we're going to see, because now we're going to bring a different reason why the messenger has to make the declaration. Okay, exactly. Why? Dilma ate baal ma'arer upsile. Why did we say that the messenger has to say it? Because perhaps there the husband will challenge it and render his position, his status, okay, as the messenger, and therefore render the get, okay, invalid. Okay, hashta. But the Gemara says, hold on a second. Hashta min kat nakit le biyande. But here we see he's actually holding the get in his hands, and he's presenting it. Okay. Ve'ir ori kama arar ale. And are we going to say that by his presenting it, he's going to challenge it at the same time? That's impossible. Okay. So we go on now with another bright Tashma. Listen to the following bright. Okay. Debai me, actually, it's a question. Debai me ne Shmuel me Rav Huna. That Shmuel asks of Rav Huna. Let's say the following, says Shmuel. Shnayim sheheviu get me bedinas. That we have two individuals bringing the get from across the sea. What happens then? Tzrichin sheyomru b'fanenu nechtav u'b'fanenu nechtav, or ein tzrichin? Do we say that both of them have to say the declaration? Or do we say, no, that's not the case? Amarle. And so Rav Huna answers, ein tzrichin. They do not have to say. Okay? So the Gemara picks up on this. Uma elu yamru b'fanenu gersha. Okay? Milo mehemne. Isn't it almost the same as if they were saying, before us she was divorced, and aren't they then to be believed? If you've got the two, okay, they're acting as Eidim. And so therefore, by the two of them bringing, it's as if they're there having been at the court and witnessed it. So therefore, maybe that's the reason we say that the Rav Huna said they don't have to say the declaration.
There's also an underlying like this here. Is it valid when he writes it and it's signed,
Well,
or when it gets to the lady?
Okay, that's true, but the Gemara doesn't bring that out, right? Okay, Le Rava Necha. So here again, to Rava, we might say in this case it's acceptable because his argument was whether witnesses are available.
And now they're
Okay,
there.
and they're there, right? Le Rabba Kasha. But to Rabba's argument, right, that they weren't knowledgeable, the Sofrim, it doesn't seem to be working. Hacha b'mayas kinan. Therefore, what are we talking about again? Lachar shalamdu, after the scribes learned the requirement of the Shema for the entire get. Ihachi, if that's the case, chad nami, when there's one messenger, one person, that also should be workable, that he shouldn't have to then say the declaration, okay? Because we've accepted the fact that one witness, okay, right? Right? If they've learned it already, then that does away with the argument okay, of Rabbah. All right. Gzeira shema yachzor davar lekil kulo. But then we come back to the concern that maybe things would go back to the way they were and that they would forget that the whole get has to be written. Okay, and notice I keep emphasizing the entire get. Why? Because we're going to reach a point in the Gemara that's going to be an issue. Okay, all right. So what happens? Ihachi, if that's the case, is the Gemara. Beitrei nami, then even when you have two witnesses, they should both have to say the declaration, not like what Rav Huna told Shmuel. Okay, Beitrei demaitu gita milta de lo shchicha. But now we come, says the Gemara, to a situation where we find that when there are two witnesses bringing the get, that is not a common situation. And what do we say? Milta de lo shchicha, lo gazur barabanan. That when it's not a common situation, okay, it's not a that the rabbis make a decree. Okay, wait a second, says the Gemara. But what about the following? Vaha isha de lo shchicha. But what about the situation we said? You can again when the woman herself brings the get. We already said that that's not common, but the Gemara already showed us that there the declaration has to be said. Utnan. But we learn elsewhere in a Mishnah, Ha'isha atzma meviya gita, when the woman herself brings the get, ubilvad shehi atzma tzricha lomar. And particularly we say here that she herself has to say the declaration, b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtav. Why? Shelo tachlok b'shlichut. Okay, so that there'd be no difference in regards to any messengership. So therefore, all single agents should have to declare the declaration, right? Ihachi, again, we come back like a circuitous reasoning. If that's the case, Baal Nami, then the husband, again bringing it as a single individual, should have to make the declaration. Allah Matanya. So again, we ask, why then was this taught? Hu atzmo shehevi gito, when he himself brings the get, einot tzarich lomar. But there we say that he doesn't have to say the declaration, b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtav. Tamamai, what's the reasoning that we say he doesn't have to? Amor Rabbanan, the rabbis would say, tzrich lomar b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtav. That he does have to say normally, a messenger, the declaration. Why? Dilma ate baal ma'are psile. That the husband might come and challenge the get and challenge the messenger and therefore invalidate it. Hashta minkat nakit le biyade. But here again we have the situation where the get is in his hand and he's presenting
and he's
it.
not really a shliach.
Okay, that could be is
So
right.
he's outside of
Right? Ve'erure kama arele. And is it possible then that he would even raise the challenge if he's the one presenting? Tashmas is the brighter. A new example. Hamevi get me Medina Taya. One who's bringing the get from overseas. Vinat nula. And he gave it to her. Velo amarla b'fanai nechtavu b'fanai nechtav. But he gave it to her without saying the declaration. What happens? Im nitkayem b'chotma. If it's possible to certify the signature, kasher, then we would say that the get is valid. Ve'im lav, and if we're not able to certify the signature, pasul, okay, then it is considered invalid. Okay, right? Interestingly enough, that the Gemara doesn't say that. By the way, you're right, but it's interestingly enough that the Gemara doesn't say, implying that the get de oraita would be acceptable, but the oraita is not. Why? Because the rabbis made the requirement as a prevention for making the get invalid, and therefore getting arriving to a point that there could be problems later on, were the woman to have married. And that's what the Gemara ultimately is going to bring up as a question in a moment. Okay, so what happens? Okay, so the Gemara goes on. Hoi lo hutzrachu lomar b'fanai nechtaba b'fanai nechtam. I'm going to translate hoi there as this way. Let us conclude then that perhaps there's no need to say the declaration b'fanai nechtaba b'fanai nechtam lahachmir alei as a way of making it a stringency for her. Ela lahakel alei, but rather we do it to make it as a leniency on her behalf. Therefore, she does not have to go searching for witnesses to be able to certify the get. Okay? Therefore, it's a leniency for her in that situation. The Rabba, right? For Rabba Necha, for Rabba, that's acceptable because his argument was availability of the witnesses to certify the get. The Rabba Kasha, but the knowledge of Sofrim, okay, that's still problematic. Hachabamayas Kinan, then what are we dealing with here? Le'achar shalamdu. Here we're saying again that they have already learned that the get in its entirety must be written lishma. Okay? Vaha amarta, but here you've said, gezerah shema yachzor hadavar lekilkulo. But maybe we've said before, we're concerned that things might go back to the previous time when not all Sofrim understand that the entire get must be written for lishma. Kisheni said, no, we're talking about the possibility that she married based on this get. Okay? Was already married, assumption that the get was a valid get. Ihachi, if that's the case, says the Gemara, have lo hutzrachu lomar b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam lachmir alei. But here, you've concluded that we said that the recitation of the declaration was not to be stringent upon her, but to be lenient for her. Okay, and what's happened? She's remarried. Now you're going to make her go around after this marriage, start looking for witnesses. Otherwise, the get is an invalid get, and any children that she could have had could have been mamzerim, all that. And you're calling this a kula kind of situation? Mishum denisetu, because she was married. Because if so, if she's not married, then she would need the declaration despite the validation of the witnesses, because therefore it would be a stringency. That's the situation. Va'amarta gezerah shema yachzor hadavar lekukolo. And here you said maybe the situation would return. I'm sorry, we did that. Okay, so what happens? Mishum denisetu. Hachi kamar. This is what we mean to how to understand it. V'chi tema lahachmir aleha ulefanka. This means that we were stringent upon her in order to free her to leave. Have lo hutzrachu lomar b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtam lahachmir aleha ela lahakel aleha. Therefore, we conclude that we did not do this to make it stringent, to say, to require the declaration to be stringent upon her, but rather that it should be a leniency for her. Because once she would be married, there is no need to find witnesses to validate the get, and therefore that's why it is indeed a leniency. Let's go over now to the top of our new Amud. Ta'ama mai. What's the reasoning here then? Dilma ate ba'al ma'ararer upasile, that perhaps the husband would come and challenge the get.
Normal case.
Okay, and therefore render it invalid. Okay, so we're now really continuing with a challenge to the arguments of Rava and Rabba. What? Okay, but we're going to say as follows: Hashta ba'al ka lo ma'arer.
Low.
Right, lo ka ma'arer. And here then the husband is not able to change. Anu nikum v'na'arer Allah. Shall we then, if the husband didn't challenge, shall we, the Beis Din, raise a challenge? Okay. Having said this now, we're going to see that the following issue is presented. Remember Rabbah, third, fourth, roughly generations of Amoraim. Okay, maybe their argument is actually based on an earlier argument of earlier Amoraim. It's one, okay? Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua. Okay, wait a second. Okay, all right, so that's the point. If it's an argument based on earlier Amorim, fine, I can understand that. An Amora can always challenge another Amor. Okay? Okay. But if we're saying it's an argument of Tanaim, it's a problem to
You
have.
have to pick one.
Okay,
You
it's a
can argue if they have.
wait. It's a
machlokes.
problem in general to have an Amora challenge a Tana. Okay, that's the problem. So let's see. So now the Gemara is going to raise that question. Right? Yes.
Would the Bedson ever challenge the get if the husband is satisfied?
No.
That's what we just asked.
That's the question that the
If
Gemara
there's
asked.
clearly, the halacha would be if there's clearly grounds to think that there's a problem,
Yeah.
they would, because they don't want mamzer. But
Right.
if it's a acceptable get and the husband hasn't said anything, the question here is what rationale is for the Beis Din to put a stumbling block in
Right.
front?
I would, Michael is right, but I would have answered just a little differently. I would have said, in this case, were the Beis Din to challenge
It's
the
a,
get,
it's a hummer.
okay, the Beis Din would really be acting on the benefit of the woman in this case.
Not if
Because,
they challenge.
well, because the question what might be, okay, to prevent mamzerus and other things. Okay, that's the point.
But there's no reason to challenge this get.
Okay. Anyway, let's go on. Beplugta de Rabbi Yochanan v'Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Maybe the argument of Rava and Rabbah has an implication, okay, to an earlier argument of that between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. And how are we going to know which position each of them take? The Gemara is going to have to spell that out for us. And they do it in particular by not only suggesting the position, but then trying to present an actual maseh, and a maseh, a situation. And remember, we've always said that when the Gemara presents an actual occurrence situation, that is very strong proof. It's not just from reason, it's from an actual psak. Okay? All right. So what happens? Chad Amar, notice the Gemara is not presents its hypothesis first. Chad Amar lefi she'ein biki'in lishma. One says because the scribes are not expert. Okay? Which we saw was
Later on,
one
Rava takes
right
that
position. V'chad amar lefi she'ein edim mitzuyin l'kaimo. And one took the position because witnesses are not available because of lack of transportation, communication, whatever. Okay, exactly. So what happens? Tistayim. Okay, it's possible you might want to conclude the following. Okay, and I phrase it as that question mark. The Rabbi, right? Namely, what happens? That the Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, who the Amar Lafisha ein Biki'in Lishma, that he is the one who argued because the scribes are not expert. The Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, why? Because there was a situation when Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, Aite Gita Lakame, the Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, who brought a get
from overseas.
Okay, of course, from overseas, before Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Va'amarle, and he said to him, Sarichna lamemar b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtam, olo. Do I need to say the declaration or not? Amarle, he said to him, Lo tzrichut, you do not need to say it. So the Gemara then continues, Lo amru ela bedorot harishonim. They said this only in regards to the
Old
okay,
days.
older generations. Right? Why? Because the argument that he could therefore be holding is she'ein b'ki'in lishma, because the scribes in those days outside the land of Israel weren't as expert in writing Gittin, okay, as they, because after they learned it, then they learned it had to be the entire Get Lishma. So in the earlier days, that would be the rationale, and that's why we're assuming that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi held to that opinion. Okay,
Well, we're not finished.
right. Aval b'dorot ha'achronim, but in later generations, the Biki'im Lishma, when they became expert in knowing that the whole get has to be written Lishma, lo tistayim, you would not come to that conclusion.
No,
Okay,
you stop at low.
lo,
Low. We do not
Tistayim.
require the
Okay.
declaration.
lo. Right, that depends on your text. Lo tis, all right, tistayim, we conclude, v'tisbara. So why then? Okay, so what is your opinion then? How do you understand this? Why the exemption? Vaha Rabbah idlei de Rabbah. But here we also said that Rabbah did actually acknowledge the view of Rav. Va'od, and even furthermore, says the Gemara, Ha'amrinan, don't we say, Shema yachzor davar likukulo, that maybe things will go back to where it was before during those earlier generations where they weren't expert. Okay. Ella, what happens? Rabbi Shimon bar Abbas, right?
So now we're going to explain why he gave
What
that
happened?
answer.
Okay. So the point being, he asked the question, do I have to say the declaration? He was told, no, he did not. So what's the import of this scenario? Rabbi Shimon ben Abba, Inish Achrina Hava Bahadye. There was another person along with him. So there were two people there, and therefore the two could act as aid. But wait a second, says the Gemara. Vahad de lo chashivle, mishum kivodo de Rabbi Shimon. And the fact that they simply didn't include or mention him was simply a matter of giving out more respect to Rabbi Shimon, because they mention him. Okay, right, that's the point. Now, the Gemara picks up. Having seen this, what happens? Itmar. It was said the following, right? In other words, we've had a discussion previously, and since we just raised this question of two bringing, comes back to remind us that elsewhere we discussed the following. Bifnei kama not nula. Before how many must the get be present? Right? Rabbi Yochanan v'Rabbi Chanina. Here we have another machloket. Right? Okay, and we saw it previously, right? Chad amar b'fnei shnayim. One said it was before two. V'chad amar b'fnei shlosha. And one said it was before three. Okay, tistayim. Perhaps we should, you conclude as follows. The Rabbi Yochanan who da'amar b'fnei shnayim, that it was Rabbi Yochanan who said it was before two. The Rabbin bar Ravi, now we're going to get a story again to try to prove, is that the case? The Rabbin bar Rav Chisda, that Rabbin bar Rav Chisda, Aite Gita lekame the Rabbi Yochanan, that here Rabbin bar Chisda brought again from Medina Sayam, from right before Rabbi Yochanan to Eretz Yisrael. Va'amarle, and he said to Rabbi Yochanan, said to him, Zil havle ba'ape trei. Okay, go and present it before two. Okay, so in other words, that would clearly tell us that Rabbi Yochanan holds that you present it before two. Ve'emelaho, and say to them, b'fanai nechtavu b'fanai nechtam, and also make the declaration before them. Tistayim. And indeed, you could
It's a good
conclude
proof.
that seems to be valid proof. So the Gemara then challenges and raises
Why
the
do they have
question.
enough like?
Okay, so first of all, it seemed to say that he requires two. We have proof that he seems to require two. And secondly, it seems to say that he required the declaration. So what is our machloket all about then? Lema bahaka miflage. Shall we say this is what Rabbi Yochanan and right and the Rabbi Chanina's argument is about? Demanda amar b'fnei shnayim, that according to the one who said it was two, kasavar is of the opinion, lefi she'ein b'ki'in lishma, since maybe the Sofrim were not experts. Umanda amar b'fnei shlosha, and the one who said it had to be given before three, kasavar lefi she'ein edim mitzuyin l'kaimo, because he may have held that the witnesses aren't available to certify their signatures. Vitisbara, and is that really the opinion you think that that's what their argument is about? We're going to
You'll see
see.
in a minute.
Hold, the Gemara is going to raise that question. Ha, mida Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. But here, from the example of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Amar lefisha ein b'ki'in lishma, we see that already he's the one that holds the rationale of that the Sofrim aren't experts. Therefore, we must conclude as a result of that, in the argument that he had with Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan holds the opposite view. That Rabbi Yochanan Amar, lefisha ein adim mitzuyin l'kaimo, that he must hold the view that it's hard to verify because witnesses don't have communication or transportation. Vahacha, and here in this case, hechi ke'amar Rabbi Yochanan b'fnei shnayim. If that's the case, why then would Rabbi Yochanan say it's sufficient to present the get before two? After all, we had three should be needed to certify the documents. Okay, to document for the documents. Va'od, and furthermore, says the Gemara, what happens? Ha Rabba itle de Rabba. We've also said that Rabba holds like the opinion of.
Agreed with
Okay,
that
Rabba.
issue, that signatures are an issue.
So what happens? Ela de kuli alma ba'inan edim mitsuyin lekan. But rather everybody is in agreement that we do require witnesses as one of the means to certify and maintain the get. Vahacha b'shaliach ne'esa eid. And here in this case, the one who was the messenger is acting like a witness.
As by making a declaration,
Right.
he's erech
Right.
nes-
Right. Ve'eid ne'esa dayan k'miflagei. And the fact then that the witness can also become a participant in the Beis Din is part of their argument. Man da'amar b'fnei shnayim, according to the one, Rabbi Yochanan, who said it can be presented before two. Kasavar, he must be of the opinion, shaliach ne'esa eid, it's possible for the messenger also to be acting as a witness when he makes the declaration. Right, but also ve'ed ne'aseh dayan, and then that witness can also become one of the three to certify the document.
So you only need two.
Right, uman da'amar b'fnei shlosha, and the one who says it has to be before three, which was Rav Huna, kasavar, he must be of the opinion shaliach ne'aseh eid, that the messenger can become a witness, but ve'en eid ne'aseh dayan, but the witness cannot become a part of the Beis Din to certify the document.
That's why you need three.
That's why you need
others.
three. V'ha kaimelan b'd'Rabbanan. But here we say that this is all based on a Rabbanan. The eid ne'aseh dayan, that a witness can become a member of the base.
In issues that
Okay.
are about
Right, because we said that it's a rabbinic inyan.
the whole thing.
Ella rather, hakaba hakimiflakim. But rather here, this is what they seem to be arguing about. Demar savar kevan de ishak sheira la again. Since a woman is considered to be viable to bring a get,
Her own get.
okay? Zimnin demaitele itita. Perhaps there are times when the woman brings the wife brings the get. V'samchei Allah, and they might rely on her. V'idach, and the
make her
other
part
one,
of the base, or she
rely on
can't
her to be part of the base and truth,
by
which she
accident.
cannot do so. V'idach, but the other, isha mida yade v'lo samchela. A woman is knowledgeable, and they cannot rely on
She
her.
would refuse to be part
Well,
of the
that's
base.
one way of translating it. I didn't have that. Okay. The woman is knowledgeable that she cannot be part of the base. Okay, and therefore they will not rely on her. to
be,
to
third.
be
So they'll have
involved
to
in
actually
that.
drag in a third.
How
Whoa,
can a
one at a
business-
time. For herself,
Her own. It doesn't matter if she's the agent for
or
someone
she could
else,
be
she
somebody
also
else.
can't be on the base.
Okay, Zev.
How can a Besdin certify the document if they don't have really enough knowledge?
Because of the AIDS declaration.
Because what they're doing is that the Beis Din is acknowledging the certification of the signatures, that these witnesses are valid witnesses, and that they saw this get written lishma and given to this woman.
Because
Two witnesses, why doesn't it stand
We
by
said
itself?
over and over that Eid Echad Ne'eman in this case.
Are you
So
talking
it's
about
as if he's two.
Okay.
So once you have two witnesses saying
So-
this
so-
is a kosher document, you still need the pro forma stamp of approval by a Beis Din
Okay.
with any contract.
Okay, you've
So
got
here, if you do not have three individuals,
you've got a certain
and the aide
process.
cannot become the third individual, you have to go out and find someone else.
There is a process, right? Okay, and you have to go through the entire process to validate the document. Okay, so what's the process? The document has to be written. The document has to be
So
signed by valid witnesses. The testimony, the witnesses' signatures have to be validated.
But when
Okay,
they-
and the court then indicates that it is a valid
I
document.
understand. When they talk about two Aiden, why don't you just stand by itself? Two Aiden are okay.
that's true.
You're
And
right.
that's why they don't
But
have to
it's
make
the
the
rat, but
declaration.
so the oraita, that may be the case. But the Rabbanan, there's more to it than that. Okay, so what
It's the other way
happens?
around.
Okay,
All right.
right. V'lo samchei Allah. All right, we're
But
going to
you can't
pick up.
count the woman as
Right,
part of
so
the
that's
base.
so what happens? We're going to continue a bit further. I know we're time pressured. Tanya Kavate the Rabbi Yochanan. And there's a brayta that teaches according to the view of Rabbi Yochanan. Hamevi get mi bedina siyam, one who brings a get from across the sea, v'nat nula, and gave it to her. V'lo amar la b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtam, but he did not make the declaration. Yotzi, he must divorce her.
He's
Vahavlad,
remarried, you have to add.
what? Well, that's understandable. If she has to divorce her, it means she married. Okay. Vahavlad mamzer, and the child, were there to be one born, is considered illegitimate, a mamzer. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That is the view of Rabbi Meir. However, the Chachamim omrim, but the sages say, "Ein havlad mamzer," that the progeny is not a mamzer. Ketzad ya'aseh. So how should the process be carried out? Okay. Yitlenu himene. He should take the get back from her. V'yachzor v'yitnenu la b'fnei shnayim. He then goes and
Hence, it's
once
very
again gives her the get
good.
before two witnesses. V'yomar, and then he says, b'fanai nechtavu b'fanai nechtam. He makes the declaration.
And you can do that
Okay.
because there's no flaw in the get. There was only a
Flaw in the process, exactly. The Rabbi Meir, but in regards to Rabbi Meir, okay, Mishum delo amar b'fanai nechtav b'fanai nechtam. Are we saying because the declaration was not said, Yotzei v'havlad mamzer, that the woman having married must then be divorced, okay, and then any possible progeny are mamzer?
Yeah.
And yes, Rabbi Meir Latami. Rabbi Meir follows his own unique perspective. The Amar Rabbi Hamnuna Mishmei De'ula, as Rav Himnuna says in the name of Ula, Omer Haya Rabbi Meir, that Rabbi Meir would say the following, okay? Kol HaMishaneh Mimatbeya Shetavu Chachamim Begittin, whoever alters, I'm going to say, the process, the methodology that was established by the sages in regards to Gittin, what happens? Yotzi, if she's married, okay, Yotzi must divorce her, Vahavlad mamzer, and the Vlad is mamzer. Okay, what happens? Bar Hadaya Ba'ela Tuye Gita. So now we see another incident where Bar Hadaya thought to or wanted to bring a get to Eretz Yisrael. Atalakami the Rabbi Achai. He came before Rabbi Achai, Dahave Memune Agiti, who was the official appointed individual to supervise all Gittin in this situation. Amarle, he said to him, Srich atala amod al kol ot va'ot, that you must watch the entire writing of the entire document, word letter by letter, to guarantee that it is written lishma for that particular woman.
Entire document, because they don't agree with it.
I know that. That's why I phrased it that way. Okay.
Suppose the document is written Lishma, but they make a mistake saying
Oh.
the name.
Oh, that would be a puzzle.
Poof,
That would be no.
out.
I suppose.
Totally
They could
possible.
make other mistakes.
Totally
That
possible.
would be
They
okay.
just misspelled the name.
Then it's not
Possible.
good. His
Possible.
name, her name.
Okay, we'll get to it. We'll get to
and
it.
the area
Yes,
is
let's, guys, let's not get ahead. Okay, come on. Sri Chatala, his argument was that you have to supervise, almost observe the entire writing of the entire document, Lishma. But what happens? He then, okay, the same individual, okay, what happens? He raises the same question later. Atelekame de Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi. He came before two other sages, Amrele, and they said to him, Lo tzrichat, you do not need to observe the entire writing of the document, Lishma. Okay? You only need to observe a certain minimum amount. Okay? Namely, the writing of the name. Okay? V'chi tema. Okay? Ha'avid lechumra. And he says, and if I want to be more stringent, okay, and watch the whole thing, nimsa atamotzi la'az al gitin harishoni. If you do that, then you would be showing your discouragement, you're making fun of earlier gittin that were written prior that. Okay, so we're going to stop right there, and we'll pick up tomorrow, okay, at that point in the Gemara.
So this next piece of Gemara is a raya that the Shaliach has to have hearing.
Well, we'll see. I don't know.
Because he's downstairs and he hears the scratching of the pen upstairs. So he must have incredibly good hearing. Right, that's what I said. So he has to have incredible hearing. He doesn't even have to see anything. All he has to do is hear the noise.
That's where we get. That's the argument between the two of them. Does he have to everything, nothing, or some?
All right, let's go, Melvin.
Rabbi Greener, we want to. Yeah. No, I'm leaving Sunday. That's a week from today.
Okay, so I can do it Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, if Green can, but I'm leaving Tuesday.
Okay, please, Michael, send me an email with the date. So I can,
All my
Michael.
dates.
yes, because
Okay, I have a date with Rip.
no, no, the date you're going to be away, because I want to.
I will do that, I
Okay,
understand.
because
but I was-
he's-
I wanted to know the dates I'm going with my wife out of town, or the dates I.
That we learned Sota, that's yours.
Oh, we passed Sota already. Okay.
I know. That's why I want to see what, try to match up what their dates are. Ruvain, Rabbi Shimon Green's style, okay, is sort of partly mine and partly Michael. Okay, he will do an introduction that sounds like it's from an academic point of view, and then he'll throw in yeshivish Musar and other things. Okay.
Tomorrow, anytime you.
Okay.
Wanna
It
ride,
depends-
Ruben, or you gonna walk?
It depends on if the handyman comes
Oh,
to attach the main, the bookcases in the main room. Okay, if he does that, then.
okay, so let me, if tomorrow I'm available. Okay. Again, that's not enough time, I'll make more time for you, I just can't do it when I can.
I understand. Thank you. Bob, the wedding is tonight?
Wedding is 4 o'clock.
Oh, mazel tov. Enjoy. Right. Okay. Let's go out this one.
Always accepted to says that the counting and the midbar